Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya So we're reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, and we're going to read text 50 through 61. Oh, sorry. We can chant that. Do you? I am Namaskara. Let's chant together. Chant together. Nam Namaskara Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Diriyat Stapreshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiti. So we'll read 50 through 61, then we'll come back and focus on 52 with the purport. These are some very interesting verses. This chapter is entitled Fundamental Principles of Material Nature. Describes the appearance or manifestation of cosmic Krishna's universal force. So text 50, when all these elements were unmixed, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the origin of creation, along with time, work, and the qualities of the modes of material nature, entered into the universe with the total material energy in 7 divisions.
These 7 principles, roused in activity and united by the presence of the Lord, an unintelligent egg arose, from which appeared the celebrated cosmic being.
This universal egg, or the universe in the shape of an egg, It's called the manifestation of material energy. Its layers of water, air, fire, sky, ego, and Mahatattva increase in thickness, one after another. Each layer is 10 times bigger than the previous one, and the final outside layer is covered by Pradhana. Within this egg is the universal form of Lord Hari, of whose body the 14 planetary systems are parts.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Virat Purusha, situated himself in that golden egg, which was lying on the water, and he divided it into many departments.
First of all, a mouth appeared in him, and then came forth the organ of speech, and with it the god of fire, the deity who presides over that organ. Then a pair of nostrils appeared, and in them appeared the olfactory sense, as well as the prana, the vital air.
In the wake of the olfactory sense came the wind god, who presides over that sense. Thereafter a pair of eyes appeared in the universal form, and in them the sense of sight. In the wake of this sense came the sun god, who presides over it. Next there appeared in him a pair of ears, and in them the auditory sense, and in its wake the devatas, or the deities who preside over the directions.
Then the universal form of the Lord, the Virata Purusha, manifested his skin, and thereupon the hair, mustache, and beard appeared. After this, all the herbs and drugs became manifested, and then his genitals also appeared.
After this, semen, the factuality of procreation, and the god who presides over the waters appeared. Next appeared an anus, and then the organs of defecation, and thereupon the god of death, who is feared throughout the universe.
Thereafter, the two hands of the universal form of the Lord became manifested, and with them the power of grasping and dropping things. And after that, Lord Indra appeared. Next, the legs became manifested, and with them the process of movement. And after that, Lord Vishnu appeared.
The veins of the universal body became manifested, and thereafter the red corpuscles or blood. In their wake came the rivers, the deities presiding over the veins, and then appeared an abdomen.
Next grew feelings of hunger and thirst, and in their wake came the manifestation of the oceans. Then a heart became manifest, and the wake of the heart the mind appeared.
Mind, the moon appeared. Intelligence appeared next, and after intelligence, Lord Brahma appeared. Then the false ego appeared, and then Lord Shiva. And after the appearance of Lord Shiva came consciousness and the deity presiding over consciousness.
So now we'll look at text 52. Etarandam visheshakyam Etarandam visheshakyam Brahma dasata Taya divi paripritam Pradenam naviterbahi Etarandam visheshakyam Brahma dasata Divi paripritam Pradenam naviterbahi Oh, I'm skipping 2 lines. It's on the next page. Sorry about that. Yachaloka vitanoyam. Rupam bhagavato hare. Etananda visheshakya. Brahma Vedanta Shotara. Paradivi Paritam. Pradamina Kavai. Yachaloka Vitanaya. Rupam Bhagavato Hare. Etaranda Visheshakya. Brahma Vedanta Shotara. Paradivi Paritam. Pradamina Yachaloka Vitanaya. Rupam Bhagavato Hare. So read the one word for word together. Etat this anda egg Vishesha Akam all Karma one after another. Pradha priest Dasha 10 times. Uttara greater. Toya Adivi by water and so on. Pariputam envelope. Pradhanena by Pradhana. Avrita covered. Vahi on the outside. Yatra where. Loka Vitana the extension of the plenary systems. This Rupam form. Bhagavata of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare of Lord Hare. Translation. Purport by His Divine Grace, Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. This universal egg, or the universe in the shape of an egg, is called the manifestation of material energy. Its layers of water, air, fire, sky, ego, and Mahatattva increase in thickness one after another. Each layer is 10 times bigger than the previous one, and the final outside layer is covered by Pradhan. Within this egg is the universal form of Lord Hari, of whose body the 14 planetary systems are parts. Purport. This universe, or the universal sky, which we can visualize with its innumerable planets, is shaped just like an egg. As an egg is covered by a shell, the universe is also covered by various layers. The first layer is water, the next is fire, then the air, then the sky, and the ultimate holding crust is Pradhana. Within this egg-like universe is the universal form of the Lord as the Virat Purusha. All the different planetary situations are parts of his body. This is already explained in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd canto. The planetary systems are considered to form different bodily parts of that universal form of the Lord. Persons who cannot directly engage in the worship of the transcendental form of the Lord are advised to think of and worship this universal form. The lowest planetary system, Patala, is considered to be the soul of the Supreme Lord, and the earth is considered to be the belly of the Lord. Brahmaloka, or the highest planetary system, where Brahma lives, is considered to be the head of the Lord. This Virat Purusha is considered an incarnation of the Lord. The original form of the Lord is Krishna, as confirmed in Brahma Samhita, Adi Purusha. The Virat Purusha is also Purusha, but he is not Adi Purusha. The Adi Purusha is Krishna. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha, Anadir Adir Govinda. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is also accepted as the Adi Purusha, the original. Krishna says, "No one is greater than I." There are innumerable expansions of the Lord, and all of them are Purushas, or enjoyers. but neither the Virat Purusha nor the Purusha avatars, Karna Daksha Vishnu, Garbo Daksha Vishnu, and Shiro Daksha Vishnu, nor any of the many other expansions is the original. In each universe there are Garbo Daksha Vishnu, the Virat Purusha, and Shiro Daksha Vishnu. The active manifestation of the Virat Purusha is described here. Persons who are in the lower grade of understanding regarding the Supreme Personality of Godhead may think of the universal form of the Lord, for that is advised in the Bhagavatam. The dimensions of the universe are estimated here. The outer covering is made of layers of water, air, fire, sky, ego, and Mahatattva. And each layer is 10 times greater than the one previous. The space within the hollow of the universe cannot be measured by any human scientist or anyone else. And beyond the hollow, there are 7 coverings, each one 10 times greater than the one preceding it. The layer of water is 10 times greater than the diameter of the universe, and the layer of fire is 10 times greater than that of water. Similarly, the layer of air is 10 times greater than that of fire. These dimensions are all inconceivable to the tiny brain of the being. It is also stated that this description is of only one egg-like universe. There are innumerable universes besides this one, and some of them are many, many times greater. It is considered, in fact, that this universe is the smallest. Therefore, the predominating superintendent, or Brahma, has only 4 heads for management. In other universes, which are far greater than this one, Brahma has more heads. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is stated that all these Brahmas were called one day by Lord Krishna on the inquiry of the small Brahma, who, after seeing all the larger Brahmas, was thunderstruck. That is the inconceivable potency of the Lord. No one can measure the length and breadth of God by speculation or by false identification of God. These attempts are symptoms of lunacy. So, several interesting points in these verses. But I want to start with a question. In this purport, it mentioned there's a statement. Srila Prabhupada says, persons who are in the lower grade of understanding regarding the Supreme Personality of Godhead may think of the universal form of the Lord, for that is advised in the Bhagavatam. So what does that mean to you? Why would this statement be there? This whole, about the whole chapter, but certainly most of the chapter, and this whole section, sure, is describing how this universal form came into existence, how it's manifest. So why is it saying lower grade understanding thinks of this? Why is it giving us something that it's then diminishing? It seems to be diminishing in these verses that we're seeing. Yes.
Because you can't have a relationship with the universal form.
Oh, very good. Very good. That's a great answer. Very well.
It's mentioned in the earlier descriptions of the universal form that those that are in the lower grade of understanding are those that cannot conceive of a personal Lord who's transcendent and dwelling outside of the universe, let alone all the expansions and so forth. So that type of person, materially, attached person, is encouraged to meditate on the various parts of the universe as the universal form of the Lord, and the Lord actually accepts that as a form of bhakti, an initiatory form of bhakti. So the mountains are his bones, the tree is his hair, the rivers and oceans are like his veins, etc., etc.
Yeah, this is great. This is perfect.
But it's imaginary. It's not really actually a form of the Lord, but the Lord is so merciful that he will accept that meditation from someone who can't really accept the fact that there is a universe, that there is a transcendental form, personal form.
Okay.
It's good to meditate on the universal form because then we start to see Krishna everywhere. When we hear things like his veins are the river and all these attributes of like all these elements of that are around us, when they remind us of Krishna, it'll just enhance our spiritual life.
Yeah, that's very good. That's perfect. These are all perfect answers, and this is why, it's exactly why this crucial, why these descriptions are given, so we can meditate on, see them. And it's interesting, they're described as illusionary because ultimately, God is not a mountain or a river. All these things are material, and Krishna is transcendental, it's spiritual energy. But they are manifestations of Him, and they help us to focus the mind. It was interesting in one of the verses, I think it's text 59, it talked about the red corpuscles or blood were manifest, and then the rivers came for the presiding deities of the veins. So in the purport, there's a statement that says, the controlling deity of the rivers is also controlling the deity of the nervous system. In Ayurvedic treatment, those who are suffering from the disease of nervous instability are recommended to take a bath by dipping into a flowing river. And certainly, I know I grew up, we used to go camping and go to the rivers. They're very soothing. They have very soothing effect. Of course, these days you have to be careful what rivers you go in, what pollutants are in there, but the concept is water has this purifying effect. So yeah, it's these are descriptions are given to help us fix our mind on God as a person. And I like what you said, Nate, about by having this understanding, we can see Him everywhere. We can see Him in the rocks and the trees and the hills, the hairs of the body. And so as we interact with material energies, these material energies can help us to remember the Supreme Person. And ultimately, we have to have, in order to have a relationship, there has to be a person. So that's also an important point. Another point that struck me was in this text, first one I think we read, 50. It mentions how all these different elements were there, and then Krishna enters into them. The earth, air, fire, water, ether, the false ego, this totally mahatattva, and then Krishna enters into it. And then in 51, it mentions again, roused into activity. These 7 principles, roused into activity and united by the presence of the Lord. And the purport makes it very, at least for me, it was a very graphic visualization to help understand. Although we may have clay, water, and fire, the elements take the shape of a brick only when we labor to combine them. So we have to have a living entity. Have a potter making so many cups or bowls or vessels out of clay. There has to be a person they're carving. Otherwise, the clay is there, the water is there. They don't put them in the kiln to heat them. Without a person doing these things, they just remain inert. They don't automatically form themselves in useful containers. Without the living energy, there is no possibility that matter can take shape. Similarly, this material world does not develop unless agitated by the Supreme Lord as the Virat Rupa. So the essential point here, which goes contrary to what most modern scientific thinking is that life comes from life. Life does not come from matter. And it's very important to understand that dead matter, Prabhupada calls it dead matter. It's inert until there's energy in it. Just this morning on the way here, I was listening to a lecture, and Prabhupada made a very interesting point. He said he was talking to one student, and he asked, where's that department within the educational system that studies the difference between a dead body and a live body? In other words, you have a living entity, and then you have another entity that's not living. So what's the difference? What is the ingredient? And if you think about a car or a tractor or any mechanical item, a computer, car stops working, then you can analyze, oh, something must be broken. So you get a mechanic and he takes it apart and you've got, the spark plug's working, is the electrical system working, is the water pump working. You check all the parts, you find the defective part, you take it out, you put in a new one, car starts. It doesn't matter if the car is built 100 years ago. You can bring it back to life if you have all the right parts. You might be a little bit worn down, but for material things, you can just look at all these things and you replace the defective part and it starts again. So why aren't they teaching in any educational system the science? Well, here's a dead body, just take the part that's broken and put it back and bring it to life. They have artificial hearts and artificial this and artificial that. And they have all these different parts they can replace. But when the soul leaves, the body's dead. Doesn't matter if all your parts are perfectly functioning, there's no life. No life, and the body's dead. And Prabhupada's point in this lecture was there's nobody studying this. This is scientific, and they don't teach it in any schools because they don't understand the science of the soul. The soul leaves, the body dies. So this is what we need to understand. What's the difference between dead matter and live matter? Well, it's the soul. There's a living being. There's a living entity, and then it animates the subject. So it's important to understand life comes from life. There was a contest given by the devotees in the 70s, I think, or 80s. I'm not sure if it's in Sri Lanka, somewhere, I think it was Sri Lanka or Asia, but one of the devotees made a poster, it's a $1 million reward if you can create life. Because the scientists say, well, we understand how life originated. There was this, I don't know how they describe it, plasma or this organic soup, and it had certain ingredients, and then from that life emerged. So it said, okay, well, that's fine. So do that in your laboratory, since you understand how it works. Get those chemicals, those amino acids or whatever they were, put them together and make life produce. We'll give you $1 million. So I don't think the devotees had $1 million back then, but they knew it didn't matter because nobody can do it. Because the scientists will say, oh, this is how it started, but they can't do it. They can't prove it. Because life doesn't come from a right combination of chemicals. Life comes when it's injected into it. And very interestingly, there was an interview with Richard Dawkins, who's one of the leading atheists today of modern times. And this interview was portrayed as a nice documentary called Expelled by Ben Stein. And basically talks about what happens to a society when you take God out of the picture. And a lot of interesting points of intelligent design and how the educational system can't really teach these things or they get banned. But anyway, in the very end, he has an interview with Richard Dawkins. And Richard Dawkins, he makes a quote, he makes a statement that's straight out of Prabhupada's purports. He said, if God exists, he's gone to a very great length to hide himself. And this is exactly what Srila Prabhupada says, that if you don't want to see God, he'll hide, he'll make himself invisible. He'll fulfill our desire. So it was pretty profound. Richard Dawkins also states in, I don't know if it's in that interview or someone else, but he was I think it may have been in that same interview, he was kind of pushing for, well, where did life start? It's Darwin's theory and evolution and all that. And at a certain point, Richard Dawkins said, he made this statement that said, well, life may have come from somewhere else. It didn't originate on this planet, it came from somewhere else. And so the point is these scientists are very confused about, they have all these theories about evolution and matter and how consciousness, which they totally don't understand. And so he's acknowledging that, yes, there must be something higher someplace, but it's not here. It had to come from outside. So he's almost admitting that life comes from life in so many ways because he doesn't have this knowledge. But it's an important point to understand that you can't have activity or intelligence if we have these phones, these Androids and iPhone phones, and if somebody had never seen one, say, where did you get that? And say, well, it just evolved. These elements organize themselves in this way. And a phone is very complicated. I couldn't create one. I don't know how they do it. But in spite of all the complexity of an iPhone, the planets, the gravitational systems, the rotation of the solar system, the universal functions, how the weather moves, the fact that we can't exist if the temperature's too far this way or too far that way. It gets too cold, we freeze. It gets too hot, we melt. So there's a small window, a narrow window where the oxygen and everything has to be right for us to live. It's a very complicated material creation. So it's more complicated than an iPhone. And it just evolved out of an explosion. It's like ludicrous. Where do we see in nature an explosion creating organized things? If things are organized, you understand. You drive in the wilderness and you come across a little town and there's buildings, you realize, oh, somebody must have lived here. There's buildings. There's organization. That means there's a person here. Because out in the woods, it's forest and logs fall different directions and it's not organized. So this is important understanding that life comes from life. And that's one of the points in this section. And then the other point, with all these different descriptions of manifestations, is just inconceivable. It's achinta. And inconceivability, is that a word? The achinta, the concept or the understanding of something is inconceivable, is very important. There's a nice story you may have heard. Narada Muni was going to see Narayan, which he used to do almost every day, frequently. And so when Brahmana knew he was going, he said, well, when you see the Lord, can you ask him when I'll be liberated? We have heard this story. When will I be liberated? This Brahmana is a Paka Brahmana. He chants his mantras every day, studies the scriptures, he performs all the proper religious activities. So he's expecting, a good return, a good result from these activities. And Narada Muni says, yes, yeah, I'll ask him. And then he passes a cobbler, and the cobbler says, yes, oh, you're going to see the Lord. Can you ask him when I'll be liberated? Narada Muni said, yes, yes. So he gets to Narayan, he's interacting, and he says, oh, I have some questions this Brahmana was asking, and this cobbler was asking when they're going to be able to see you, when they'll be liberated, and be able to come to the spiritual world. And Narayan says, well, for the Brahmana, it'll be a long, long time. I don't really know when. As many leaves as on a tamarind tree, that's many lifetimes. It'll be a long, long time. And Brahma was a little surprised. And then he said, what about the cobbler? He said, oh, yeah, he'll see me in this very lifetime. At the latest, at the end of this lifetime, he'll see me. He'll be liberated very soon. His future is already guaranteed. Lord Brahma was a little puzzled. It's like with the cobbler is a simple, makes shoes. He's not a particularly saintly or elevated personality. The Brahmanas, one would think, would be back immediately. So he's very puzzled. Narayan says, so when you tell them this news, just if they ask what I'm doing, tell them I'm eyeing an elephant through the eye of a needle. And Narada says, okay. So he goes back and sees them, and he tells the Brahmana, oh, what did he say? When will I be liberated? He says, not for many, many lifetimes. It's many leaves on a tamarind tree. And he was very disturbed. He said, well, that makes no sense at all. That can't be true. Well, what was he doing? He said, well, he was studying an elephant through the eye of a needle. This Brahmana said, oh, this is nonsense. You didn't see Narayan. You're telling me some bogus stuff. You just go away. He completely rejected the information he got. And then he went to the cobbler, and cobbler was very happy to see him. Jumped up enthusiastic. Yes, yes. So you saw Narayan. How did it go? And he said, yes. He said, you'll be liberated in this very lifetime. And he was very happy. And he said, well, what was he doing? He was threading an elephant through the eye of a needle. And the cobbler just said, oh, it's amazing. My Lord is amazing. He didn't do anything. Narada Muni said, well, you believe this? Or like, how can you believe he was threading an elephant through the eye of a needle? He said, I sit here working on shoes under this banyan tree, and this banyan tree is producing so many seeds, and in every seed contains a whole other banyan tree. The seed is tiny. How can this little tiny seed hold on a whole banyan tree? And there's thousands of these seeds. So if he can put that whole tree in this little seed, then elephant eye of a needle, no problem. He can do whatever he wants. So he had faith. He had implicit faith and understanding that there are things beyond his mental ability to understand, but he accepted because he could see. The things he could understand were quite amazing. And whereas the Brahmana read so many books, but he didn't have that faith. He didn't understand. If he couldn't understand it, then he couldn't accept it. And this is a material disease we have that we try. We think we're so smart and our brains are this big. What, 1 square foot, and the universe is how big? So our brains are actually very tiny. And we may think grand thoughts and so on, but our intelligence is limited. And so it's good to understand and question and try to learn, okay, what is it I need to know to function? How, why should I surrender? How can I surrender? And question and use our intelligence to learn those things that will help us make advancement. But at a certain point, there will be things that we don't understand. And if we're not comfortable with that, our spiritual life gets blocked, that we have to accept that some things are inconceivable. And if Krishna gives me the understanding, I'll understand it. But if not, I may never understand it. And that's okay, because I'm not God. I'm limited. My brain is this big, so I can understand as many things as can fit in this box or as this container. If my brain were bigger, maybe I could understand more. But I can understand those things that I can. Which on a whole another topic, an interesting point is that the mind, we tend to think is here, but the mind actually lives in the heart. The mind is seated in the heart, next to the soul, and it constrains the brain. The brain is just a CPU and RAM. It's just circuits. It's just provides the mechanism to process information. The actual synthesizing of that information and making sense out of it, that happens in the mind, which is in the heart. I don't know why I brought that up. That's sort of not the topic of these verses, but this inconceivability is important. So these verses, this universe it's difficult to comprehend everything, but that's okay. And so, yeah, maybe I'll stop there and open it up to questions or comments, although from the first question and answers, I think you guys already understand the gist of this whole section, which is very enlivening. So I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments. Yes. Michael.
When you were saying about the devotees challenging scientists to make life, I remember one devotee told an anecdote. He said at some point in the future, science became very advanced, and scientists started cloning people and making people. So they decided they know that there's God, but they decided science is so advanced that we don't need God. So they sent one of the best scientists, a representative, to tell God that he can go and just retire. So the scientist meets God, says, "Dear God, science is so powerful. We don't really need you anymore." God said, "I disagree, and I offer a challenge." Scientist said, "Whatever, any challenge you'll take. Science is so powerful." And he said, "Create a human being." He said, "No problem, I did it already." So scientist leaned to pick up some clay, and God said, "No. From my clay, from your clay."
You get your own clay. Yeah, that's a great example, because the scientist, the material mentality, is very expert at manipulating things. And another point Papa made in his lecture this morning, I was listening on the way down there, was we honor, I think there was a movie made recently, Oppenheimer, we glorify scientists for creating this hydrogen bomb, this atomic bomb. And they performed a lot of tapasya, a lot of intelligence, a lot of work, a lot of austerity went into this. But what did they do? They created a device that kills people. Well, people die out of anyway. You don't have to, if you don't kill them, they're going to die. So they haven't really created anything that wonderful. The output of all their tapasya was just death. Why don't they use their intelligence to create something that keeps people from dying? That would be an amazing thing. Here, do this and you won't die. So their so-called intelligence and pasya is just creating something that happens anyway. Everybody dies. So, okay, you kill everybody at one time and maybe it takes some years to die. Why is that a wonderful thing? And this is that material. They can manipulate things, but they can't originate things. They can't create the elements. They can just move them around. I've been told, I don't know if it's true, but I've been told that electricians, we still don't really understand electricity. It can be manipulated in so many ways, but what it actually is, no one really understands. It's just, and there are a lot of laws in physics. You study physics and mathematics. There's a lot of base laws they accept, and then all their calculations work. They can't really prove those laws. They just accept, well, here's this law, and all our calculations are based on it. Well, how do you know that law is real? Well, it's just everybody understands that without it, none of this stuff works. So they have faith. They have faith in their laws and their calculations, same way we have faith in Krishna. That's for good.
Yeah, they can accelerate death. Yeah,
Yeah, can accelerate that.
That's Prabhupada's. Yeah, along the lines. So what if someday they create a human being? It's already being done, like you said. Krishna creates and destroys so many living entities, billions and trillions of living entities at every moment, and provides for their maintenance. So there's no big deal. Prabhupada says nobody will pay to see a dog bark, but they'll pay $10 to see a man dog bark like a dog.
Yes.
It seems as though science today has forgotten what science is. They kind of just make stuff up. Originally, the idea of science was you observe and then you come up with a hypothesis, but then you do experiments to prove the hypothesis. And if you don't, you can't actually prove something without the process of testing it out, and proving it over and over and over again. So they just make stuff up. It's a form of gross cheating.
Yeah, this was one of the main points of that documentary called Expelled by Ben Stein. I mean, to your point, Pluto, I think, one year it's a planet, then it's not, then it is, and it's, they keep changing their opinion about things. But this documentary, it made that point that science means we have this hypothesis, we do this experiment, and it either proves the hypothesis was true or it proves it's not true. And then they adjust it and go on. But in the modern teaching or scientific educational establishment, and it gets into intelligent design, there are scientists and material, not spiritual persons, just scientists who study nature, DNA, and different things, and they come to the conclusion that there must be some intelligence at work somewhere. They're not saying that God exists, but they're just saying the complexity and intricacy of these things, there's some intelligence somewhere, and they're puzzled by it. But as soon as they say that word intelligence and put it in the paper, their career's finished. They lose their tenure, they can't teach. It's like you're saying, the whole idea of intelligent design, oh, you're a fanatical Christian and you're trying to convert people to believe in God. And they're not saying that at all. They're just saying, hey, the complexity of this, whatever it is, that they're looking at the hypothesis, they're doing some work, and that evidence is taking them in this direction. Well, this direction is not material. You can't go there. You can only follow the evidence if it leads to a material conclusion. And then there's a lot of evidence documentary about how careers are ruined and things. So it's exactly to your point that science means, hey, if the evidence says that there's a spiritual intelligence something, then we should follow that. That's the scientific process.
And what this shows is that there are some things that are unknowable by the scientific process without actually transcendence, without actually going outside of the material and taking on the science of God.
Yeah.
And once do an experiment with the science of the soul, then we can come to know some of the things that are unknowable in the other way.
Yeah, you can experience it. Prabhupada, I may have mentioned this before. Srila Prabhupada was talking to the Board of Education of South Africa, and he was basically trying to convince them to teach Bhagavad Gita in the schools. And they said, well, they were very polite. We can't do that. It's sectarian. We don't get in religion. He said, religion, this isn't religion. The soul, whether you're Hindu, Muslim, Christian, or atheist, your body's going to get old, the hairs turn gray, and then you'll die. You can't, that's not religion, that's just the fact of life. So that where does that soul go? And what happens after death? This is scientific. There's a science behind the living entity. And it has nothing to do with religion. It doesn't matter if you say, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in God. This is my argument to atheists. I don't believe in God. Okay, since you don't believe in God, you're not going to get old. Your hair won't turn gray. I shouldn't say gray. Maybe they dye it. That's not gray. But if you don't believe in God, then you won't get wrinkles. You won't get old, and you'll live forever. Because time is a form of God. And so the time factor wears things down. Things deteriorate. Eventually they disintegrate, including the body. So you'll just say, no, thank you, I'm not going to die. But you can't do that. So you're going to surrender to a supreme power beyond yourself. You call it time, call it God, call it whatever you want, but you cannot deny that. You can't say that. So I'm kind of getting off the whole topic, but it is a good point, and it's important for us to understand because science, so-called science, are always presenting these means of satisfaction. Take this medication, do this and you'll be happy. Live this way and you'll be happy. And not to say that, we shouldn't use doctors and medication. These things are necessary at times, but we have to be a little suspicious of some of their promises for health, happiness, and eternal life because they don't know. They're making this stuff up. So we accept it. Prabhupada said we accept truth from a higher source because that's the only way you can get access to something which is beyond you is that it's given to you. So we can't figure it out on our own. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you very much. I was just reflecting when you were saying about the intelligent design and how lamentable it is that the scientists are dismissing just at the fact that they're suggesting there must be some intelligence. And it might be because of the evangelical tendencies by those who are actually presenting that model. And thank you for pointing out, Prabhupada was very, very keen in do not bring religion to this. Yeah, actually, there's some morning walks he would dismiss when, sometimes Prabhupada asks a question and then disciples will answer. Prabhupada sometimes even said, do not bring Krishna into this. It's like, logic and science. It was very important to him. Hence, there's BI, and it's very lamentable that actually some who are more like evangelically inclined have kind of ruined it for everybody.
Yeah, it's a good point that because that's the first, like in this documentary, it points out as soon as the term intelligent design comes up, anyone who's read a lot or versed in these things, they connect that to an evangelical Christian, saying God in the Bible, God created Earth in 7 days, and this is all that, and it's not. And these scientists aren't saying that. The one person just wrote a paper. He said we should just discuss what intelligence means and what we're seeing, and like we should just discuss it. He's not a Christian. He wasn't advocating they talk about religion. He was just saying, hey, this information seems to be organized in a way that, what does this mean? And just by using that word in his paper, intelligent design, and I don't even think it was intelligent design. It was like design was here, intelligent was there, the idea was there. His career was finished, and that's largely why, as they connected immediately to the Christians. And it's a good point. Probably there was one, I don't remember the details, maybe somebody knows, there was one morning walk or conversation where where Prabhupada made that point, and he was challenging the disciples, and they were quoting Bhagavad Gita as their reference, as their evidence, several times, and he said no. He said no. He said, why are you using Bhagavad Gita? Why are you using Krishna? He said, just it's a scientific thing. Just state it on that value that it's not. We're not trying to push people to accept Bhagavad Gita. We're trying to push them to accept the soul, accept you're not this body. What the point was, not that we're not, we are trying to distribute Bhagavad Gita, but his point was exactly that. Don't bring in religion. If you bring Bhagavad Gita, they're going to just say it's religion. Just make a scientific argument to make your point that the soul is not this body, or life comes from life, or whatever the specific they were discussing. But it was very profound conversation where he made that same point. It's like, this isn't about religion. This is science. It's scientific. And to your point, and Rabindra Srip used to say this, or Shivaram Swami says this a lot also. He would debate with these mock debates with atheists. It's scientific in that we have a process that will give you love of God. If you do these activities and you follow these steps, your consciousness will be purified, your heart will be purified, you'll become happy. So all you have to do is perform the experiment. Follow the regular principles, chant the Maha Mantra, do these activities, and you will experience the result. I can tell you about it all day long, but it's not going to help. You have to actually do it. So for those people who say, well, it doesn't work, how do you know it doesn't work? Have you tried it? Actually go through the process. And there's whole stories about that. There's a thief in Bombay one time that was hiding from the courts because he stole something and stayed in the temple for 6 months to evade it. Finally, they caught him and went to the court. And by that time, he had become a devotee. And the judge kind of let him off. But he didn't come in there to make advancement. He was a thief. He came in there to evade punishment. But he followed the process because he had to shave his head. He had to do it so he wouldn't get caught. And it worked. It transformed him. And he wasn't intending for that to happen at all. But anyway, I'll stop there. Yes, one last question.
One more example of this where I've been told by several Prabhupada disciples that the FBI had infiltrated a couple of temples, and they would go undercover, young agents, and just to gather information and find out what are these people about. But what happened is those agents became devotees.
Yeah. I hadn't heard that. FBI's, that's interesting. Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to state that science is starting to believe in the whole soul concept. There's a whole channel on it called Gaia, where basically it's a bunch of different episodes of all these different studies, like Dr. Joe Dispenza. It's considered pseudo-science, but they actually have like these devices they put on people's heads and stuff, and they can see that when we do meditation and mantra meditation, that it really does affect us on a body, like it really does help heal us, and sound heals us. And in his books, he proves that we do have a soul. He proves that, that we do have these energy centers and all that. So I do believe that science has definitely revolutionized and it's definitely changed a lot, whereas before they didn't believe it. But now it's like science and spirituality is coming together, and because they are starting to realize that, yeah, there is more to this than science. The way that they used to try to prove things by material we've reached a point where we have to start studying the spiritual.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. And I know the medical industry has acknowledged that also. Years ago, it used to just be get surgery, take medicine. Now they actually understand that when people pray and have some faith or have a strong community, they heal faster. They formally acknowledge that. They encourage that because they don't understand it, but they say, yeah, patients who have this, they do better than patients who don't. So fine, pray, do whatever you want to do, chant, and so they've kind of acknowledged that it has an effect where they didn't used to in the past. So that's encouraging. And Prabhupada said it to his scientists, Sadhaputta Prabhu and Bhakti Siv Damodar, use your knowledge to scientifically prove the existence of God. It was a mandate he gave them. That's the whole PI is just go out and demonstrate this knowledge and educate people, because it's reality, so it's provable on some level. Anyway, I guess I'll stop there. I tend to go over and try to Granthra Shimba Bhagavatam Ki Srila Prabhupada. Mahaprasade Govinde Smadam Hivashya Avgunya Vishwasadakti. Krishna and Vaishnava. Jai.